Hey yo, it's time for episode 4 of the Intertestamental Period, and our last episode we looked at the Greek period, the Hellenistic period, and we've got Alexander the Great and the destruction of Tyre in 332, talked about the city of Alexandria, and over here this is, I think, a piece of the Septuagint, the Greek Old Testament translation. We talked about Greek culture and dress and art and language and everything spreading throughout the world. But now we're looking at after John Hyrcanus and, I guess John Hyrcanus is coming up. After Antiochus Epiphanes does some bad stuff there at the temple, the Jews have had enough and they kick out their overlords. They go to war. And some of their heroes have been made into plush dolls these days. Our next period is called the Hasmonean Period here. This is Antiochus Epiphanes right here. And then this is your Judah Maccabee, the hammer. He's huggable, everybody. So, let's go to our other notes and get this going. The Maccabee Period, 165 to 63 BC. At this point, there is one handout that I need you to go and find. I'm going to find it myself here. And here it comes. And I want you to find this one right here. Hashing out the Hasmonean. Hashing out the Hasmonean. You can see the dates here are all in our time period, right? So this is the one I have out or have handy as we look at our guys here. The Maccabeans. I got mine out here so I can refer to it every now and then. And you can see how everybody's related, right? So, notes. Okay, so one of the big problems is the thing about culture. There's some that have adopted, as Jews, adopted Greek culture and dress, and they go to the movies, they like the theater, right? They have accommodated themselves. It's like if you moved to a different country and you just started dressing like they did and trying as much as possible to use their language, kind of like that. So those that had adopted Greek culture and ways were known as the Hellenists. And Hellenism is Greek culture in ways that was spread throughout the ancient world by Alexandra the Great. The Hellenizers founded the Decapolis. You can think of that. It just even sounds great. Deca means 10. A polis is a city-state. This is a federation of 10 Greek city-states, mostly on the east side of the Jordan. And if you look at a good study Bible, you look at the back, you're looking under like the New Testament type of map, it'll have places like, let's see, get a map here. Where's the Decapolis? Kingdoms of Israel and Judah. No, it's not helpful. Pella, Gadara, Abela, Hippos. They're all on the east side of the Sea of Galilee. Scythopolis. There we go. That is, it's kind of near the Jordan River. On the west side, Nain, Tiberias, okay? So you got this 10 city-states. Greek Federation, there you go. That's definitely an influence of Hellenistic culture on the Jews in the land. Also, again, it's oftentimes it was the young people who were adopting these things, and the older people are like, oh, we've lost our children. So you got the influence on Jewish youth of Hellenism. They are given, if you've ever read The Chosen by Chaim Potok, you got like the real good Jews, they call the like secular Jews, the apikorsim, which is probably like a swear word. So in their language, their dress, they would go to the theater, they would go to the gymnasium, maybe some of them adopted, took on ideas about circumcision as the Greeks did. But yeah, definitely you see that come up in the culture of the two boys, Danny and whatever the other guy's name was in The Chosen. Then you've got the ones that won't conform to anybody else's culture. They were going to be super duper pure Jewish folks. And that would be the Hasidim, or the pious ones, also brought up in The Chosen. These would be like the Orthodox. Orthodox Jews. They still wear the long curly things, they wear the tassels on their clothes, all that kind of stuff. And they opposed any intrusion of Greek culture in life. They were super separated. Probably the precursors to the Pharisees. Okay, which Pharisee, part of their name is to cut or to separate. Well, Sadducees, that's what they're like. So I would say the Hasidim give rise to the ideas behind Pharisaism. Think again how this would work out in the New Testament. You got a guy like Timothy, whose father's a Greek and whose mom is a Jew. So issues of circumcision and law-keeping and dress and culture and all that were very controversial. And you read the book of Galatians, you read the book of Acts, you see that Timothy was actually circumcised as a young adult. Also look at the controversy in the early church in Acts 6. You've got the Hebrews and you've got like Hellenistic Jews. And they're both now in the church, and there's a problem with widows being attended to. So this issue stuck around for quite some time. All right. Number 3. Then we get the uprising of the Hasmoneans. The Hasmoneans are an important Jewish family. You can see their family tree here. At the top you got Mattathias, and then 3 sons, Simon, Judah, who's called the Maccabee or the Hammer, and Jonathan. Jonathan Hasmonean. You can see they had different roles. You've got a high priest. The first Hasmonean high priest was Jonathan. You've got John Hyrcanus, who destroys Samaritan temple. You've got Aristobulus, the first Hasmonean king, quote unquote. So this is not a royal family. This is not a Judean family. It's not really even of the tribe of Levi. Okay, that's what gets a little uncertain and confusing. Mattathias, who died in 166, was angry at the apostasy that he thought he saw in his culture. Like, we got too many Jews that are like going over to the Greeks and their way of thinking and their lifestyle. Our kids are dressing like a bunch of hippies. And so he gets ticked off and he goes and he kills one of these Jews that he thinks is a bad Jew and a Greek officer. So now he's messed with the military, and here it comes. His son, Judah, the Maccabee. Maccabee is a Hebrew word for hammer. It's kind of cool because one of the Israel teams, soccer teams, that sometimes you see making the playoffs and that kind of stuff is like Tel Aviv, and then the Maccabi Hammers. In December of 165, he liberates Jerusalem from Greek influence and authority. He takes control of the temple area and secures Jewish religious freedom, which was taken away by Antiochus Epiphanes when he came in and set up a statue of Zeus and slaughtered the sow on the altar. So he undoes that, and so he's like a superhero. So the Jewish people there have taken the land back, right? Or take what's ours. Then you got Jonathan, his brother, who becomes the first Hasmonean high priest. So this one guy takes control of the Temple Mount in the city of Jerusalem, and he sets his brother up as a high priest. He's not a Zadok high priest, but he's recognized as a high priest by the Syrians to the north, and starts to just regulate the religious life in the land. It's going to be very strict, right? It's going to be like, hey, this is the way we got to do things according to the way that he sees the world, not according to necessarily the strict rules of the scriptures, the ordinances, and whatnot. Then we got Simon, the other brother. In 140, he helped gain complete independence from the Seleucids. Remember, they're the Syrians to the north, Greek Syrians that controlled the region. So this generation of the family is able to help secure the land and push out as much as possible the Greeks. He goes downhill from there. These Hasmonean priest king guys. So we got John Hyrcanus, 135 to 104 BC. You see Simon's son is John Hyrcanus. And he launched expeditions to conquer the surrounding peoples. I read that to you in the last episode, from Josephus in the Antiquities of the Jews. It mentioned that he conquered the Idumeans and forced them to be circumcised and basically conform to Judaism. He beat them up, like I said, brought them under submission, and then the Samaritan temple went north. They destroyed the Samaritan temple. That caused some animosity there. The Samaritans stayed in that region, but were really ticked off now at the Jews, especially Jews that were heading south from Galilee to Jerusalem for festivals. That happened in 128 BC. He alienated the Hasidim, the pure ones, by his worldly ways. He was just acting however he felt like. He was taking his power and using it for pleasure. And it is during John Hyrcanus' rule that we get the first mention of the Pharisees and the Sadducees as being these religious political parties. Very different. It's like Republicans and Democrats. If you've studied U.S. history, you read about how the development of these parties and their political philosophies developed. This is when you get that in Israel. Very different. They fight with each other all the time. Read Acts chapter 22, I think it is. Okay, looking at the chart again, John Hyrcanus' son is Aristobulus. He's the first official king, Hasmonean king, and he extends the borders of Israel all the way up into Galilee. And he prefers Greek names to Jewish ones. You notice this John. That's a Hebrew name, but Aristobulus definitely doesn't sound Jewish at all. Okay, so you got Simon, Judah, Jonathan, Mattathias, all very Jewish. This guy takes Greek names. Then his brother, Alexander Jannaeus, again, very, very Greek. Alexander, come on. Very naughty guy. Extended the borders to equal the borders of the land during the Davidic kingdom. So that's all the way up to the river, to the Euphrates, and all the way down to the brook of Egypt. He had a lot of concubines, so he enjoyed his power by collecting women. And he alienated the Pharisees. It's like pushed them to the edge, didn't give them as much influence in society. And he used mercenaries, so he paid foreigners to come and fight for him. Kind of like the Pope. He does that. Next one is Alexandra. Salome Alexandra. Okay, that is Alexander Jannaeus' wife, Salome. And she's the exact opposite of her husband. Once her husband dies, she takes over, and she does a really good job of ruling. And this becomes known, her reign becomes known as the Golden Age of the Maccabean Period. I gotta listen to the reciprocal song again. Okay, their children are Hyrcanus II, who favors the Pharisees, and Aristobulus II, who favors the Sadducees. How about that for a little family rivalry? Tastes great, less filling. Warring brothers. So Hyrcanus is pushed out, and Aristobulus takes control of Jerusalem and the Temple Mount, and the Sadducees become the ones that really control all the religious stuff in Jerusalem on the temple. Okay, they got the keys. Would be the Sadducees. So there's our Maccabean period. Very kind of interesting period of self-rule, but didn't last for very long until the Romans come in and establish their authority over the land. That's what we get when we hit the New Testament. So let's look briefly, since we got a few minutes here. We've got Pompey comes and takes the land for Rome in 63 BC. He is another one of these guys that enters the Holy of Holies. As Daniel described, this abomination of desolation thing happened under Antiochus Epiphanes IV, happens under Pompey, is going to happen later under, I think it's Titus. It's going to be another Roman guy that comes and does this stuff. So he supports Hyrcanus in the battle. Hyrcanus, the Pharisee supporter here. Pompey says, okay, well, we'll kind of side up with you in this controversy. Pompey, if you recall, was part of the first triumvirate, and a very famous Roman military leader. He's followed by Antipater, And now we're starting to talk about then the other, where is that thing? No, maybe this one? Yep. Where we get famous folks, there we go, 1st century emperors, Roman procurators over Judea, etc. Okay. So that's 1st century. We're not there yet. We're getting here. We're getting here. I guess that's why I was thinking about that. So never mind. Antipater comes next, and he's an Idumean. He becomes governor of Judea. So you get this, how this is going to be. They basically hired these guys from the south part of the land who used to be Edomites, who are now Idumeans. Why don't you govern Judea? And he says, sure. He courts favor in Rome with important people, and he gets this governor position. He also gets it set up so that his son will take his place. His son is this guy named Herod the Great, who, because they're all supported by Rome, and they all have friends in high places, they get these titles. Governor. Herod the Great gets the title of King Herod. There is not really a king. So Rome rules over Judea through puppets, through these other guys, through the Hasmonean priests to help kind of keep things under control, and then Herod, king of the Jews, and his family, his descendants, the other 3 Herod people that we'll see in a coming up lecture. Also through procurators, which are kind of like these regional judges, officials, and the most important one in the New Testament is Pontius Pilate. Okay, I think we've heard of that guy. So quickly in conclusion here, you note we've gone through 4 Gentile kingdoms that were listed in Daniel 2 and in Daniel 7. Babylon's done away with. Cyrus took over. He was a Persian. The Persians ruled for a while, and we get the story of Esther and Ezra and Nehemiah and Malachi. And then the Greeks come in, and they rule by extension from Alexandra the Great to the four guys that followed him from his army, and until we get to Antiochus Epiphanes. We get the Hasmonean period there, and then we get Rome. So 4 Gentile kingdoms of Daniel 2 and 7, Alexander, Darius, and Antiochus Epiphanes. Pretty explicit that they're dudes from Daniel chapter 8. And then you got the Ptolemy Seleucids conflict and Antiochus Epiphanes described in Daniel chapter 11. A lot of those things, there weren't details given to it in Daniel, but now we can see, looking back, how all those things, very specifically how they happened during that period. Okay, our next lecture is going to be on the Herod family, so tune in for that. And the next worksheet thing that you'll want to have is this one here with the Herod people. Also, this will be your point that you want to pull this out, and you should be able to finish up this first section of questions. You can match those up now with Persian, Greek, Maccabean, or Roman. Good luck.